Welcome, I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. From our BizVision Studios in the UK, you're watching the Conscious Business Show on the BVTV network. Sometimes concepts idle around for a while, slowly gathering use and awareness. Sort of nice to do rather than must do. Then suddenly something happens that propels that concept to the top of mind of most people. I'm talking about emotional intelligence, a key need in today's altered world, and in my mind, an essential skill of a conscious leader. My guest today is a renowned expert in emotional intelligence, but I'll let him tell you about that and himself as we say welcome to Rob Hoblin. Welcome, Rob.
Right, thanks, Malcolm. Thanks very much. My name is Rob Hoblin, as Malcolm has mentioned. I'm an emotional intelligence practitioner. I've been doing this for the last 5 or 6 years. Previous background for me was in policing in the UK in a senior position in my last 10 years.
Excellent. Now, okay, then let's just fill a few more blanks in from that opening piece, Rob. Back into who you are and what you do and who you do it for.
Yeah, I'm a leadership and management trainer predominantly. Within that leadership and management piece, I'm a certified emotional intelligence practitioner. So some of my clients want specifically to have the emotional intelligence assessment done on an individual basis or perhaps on a team basis to see how they can improve self of those that get involved with it, and leading on then to kind of improving kind of bottom line figures at the end of the day.
Hey, Rob, just before I move on, I'll have a few viewers prompting or shouting at the screen, why has he got that police helmet in the back?
Well, that's because I used to be in policing for nearly 30 years.
Wow.
So it's I do a lot of police work still with new recruitment coming through and other things related to policing. I actually teach a policing degree at a university in London as well. So it's always good. The fact that we're doing Zoom a lot, I always like to leave it in the background. And you never know, Malcolm, you might get the wrong person coming on a call and it's just a bit of a hint to them what my previous occupation was.
All right. I just thought it was you dressed up and walked through the village, pointing a hairdryer at people and they slowed down.
They were the days.
Yeah. So how did you get into emotional intelligence?
Well, that's a good question, Malcolm. I've always been, I wouldn't say I'm an academic, but I studied an MBA when I was in policing. I did a master's in international studies when I was in policing. And I left 6 years ago. I left early deliberately because I just wanted to kind of travel the world, find out how other people do what they do, find out more about diversity, and then find out more about myself as well. And then I came across this whole thing through Daniel Goleman, is the kind of guy I've studied.
Yeah.
I know he wrote the book in 1996 about emotional intelligence. And once you kind of start reading it, then you think, oh, I want to know more now. So I then thought, well, what do I need to know about it? And then I found out that, yes, you can be a practitioner in it. And once I became a practitioner, it kind of snowballs. And you just want to know more and find out, how does it work? How does it work in business, but also how does it work at home as well? Because it's not just a business function for me. Everybody is born with emotional intelligence. And that's the thing that always kind of resonates with me. We've all got emotional intelligence. What we don't know is how much emotional intelligence do we have? Where do we have really top end emotional intelligence? Where have we got areas to develop? And how do we find this all out?
Excellent. Now, help me sort some confusion out. What is EQ, emotional quotient, and EI, intelligence? Are they interchangeable?
Interesting. Again, this is about language, I would say, Malcolm. I would say EI is just an acronym for the term emotional intelligence. So when I mentioned we all are born with a level of emotional intelligence and we take that through our lifehood, emotional quotient is how we measure it. And when I say how we measure it, I'm going to talk about two separate things here. You and I can go onto an online thing and we can go and find an emotional intelligence assessment and get 10 out of 20 or whatever it might be. That is measuring it. However, it's not scientifically validated. So for me, when we're using the term EQ, it's got to be scientifically validated through a proper questionnaire that's been used globally and tested globally, so that when you're getting your ratings, that is a scientifically validated EQ assessment.
Excellent. Yes, now I'm getting it. So why is emotional intelligence suddenly so important within a business?
Again, I think it's a little bit about awareness. I would say, Malcolm. I say it's some of those things you don't know what you don't know.
Hmm.
So I'll give you an example. My MBA, we never used the term. We never came across the term back in the year 2000 about emotional intelligence at all. I would say 10 years ago, it was coming out as some new language because of Goleman's book and other people that were doing it. But I would suggest that once business leaders recognize the value of looking at emotional intelligence and looking to improve emotional intelligence in self and in others around them, then they're getting that. Hang on a minute, we could make a lot more money if we look at emotional intelligence and look at how to improve it. And it's not just about within the business. This is about who we engage with as well. This is about our potential new clients. So how do we engage more meaningfully with our new clients as opposed to how we used to do it? So it's got some huge benefits for business, but I also, as I mentioned before, Malcolm, I actually think it's got huge benefits for social life as well, non-business area.
Yeah, I quite agree totally with you, Rob. Now, in my early days of learning AI and blending it into my own leadership programs, I learned that around 70% of your success is down to your emotional intelligence and only 30% to your technical skills. Is that ratio still relevant, or is it a fake news ratio? And if it's relevant, why?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, that, Malcolm. I would say it's contextual rather than me saying it's 70-30 or 80-20. I would say it really is about being contextual. One acronym we haven't come up with yet is IQ. So, for instance, technical for me is all about our intellectual quotient.
Yeah.
And our intellectual quotient, bad news for you and me, by the way, it peaks around about 19 years old.
Ooh.
So our IQ, we're past it. Forget it. And probably
hey,
most of our viewers,
speak for yourself. I'm planning.
most of our viewers might have peaked as well. But the good news about EQ is we can keep on going, improving our EQ all the way through what they say is around about late 60s, early 70s. So we've all got room for improvement with EQ, but we kind of peak with our IQ. So the technical ability, the technical knowledge, we kind of, once we've got it, whatever level that is at. For me, the whole ratio about emotional intelligence, about our emotions and knowing the emotions of others, I think because we're improving that, because businesses have taken this on now, and those that have taken it on use it as case study as well, we can see that the two definitely go hand in glove. There's no doubt about it. But I think there's less emphasis perhaps on the IQ and more emphasis on the EQ because of those relationships that we can build with our clients, whoever those clients might be. So once we know we're good at making widgets because we're good at the technical stuff, and technical's always improving anyway. But that making of widgets plus our use of emotional intelligence through the sales, through the marketing, through the strategic conversations we may have, through the operational, the tactical, whatever it might be. Once we've got these two things like this, then we're rolling. We're rolling big time.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. So I've just got to combine my 19-year-old age with my no, look, I've interviewed, as I said to you, over 250 CEOs, MDs, leaders around the world, and some of them are struggling. There's no doubt about it on what I would say their level of engagement, communication. So what do business leaders find hardest about emotional intelligence? And does that difficulty differ between age and gender?
Yeah, I think they find it hardest. This is just my perspective here, Malcolm, because it's you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. There's a lovely model called Johari's window. I don't know if you've heard of Johari's window. Yeah, we talk about the unknown quadrant in the bottom right hand side of Johari's window. You don't know, none of your staff know, so we're kind of absolutely in the wilderness. And then somebody mentions it. Oh, you need to do a bit of emotional intelligence. You need to go and get an assessment. Oh, what do I want to go and do that for? And sometimes it's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of taking an assessment. And actually, the results come out and you think, I'm actually really, really low on impulse control. I'm really high on decision making. You know, I'm actually low on assertiveness, and I might not want to share this with the rest of my colleagues. So I think some of it is actually fear of the unknown. But in terms of getting that across that fear, it's we all have to start somewhere. And I go back to my statement I made 10 minutes ago. We all have a level of emotional intelligence. The good news is, no matter what that level is, it can be improved. And if I can just add to that, Malcolm, it's not in emotional intelligence, it's not necessarily about having a really high score. It's actually about having a balanced score. So where you've got composites and you're trying to get, for instance, you may have a really high score on decision making, but a really low score on impulse control, if I can use that. What we're trying to do, we're trying to get them much closer together, so we can get them balanced. So you might have to bring one score down to then bring another one up to have a balanced emotional intelligence score. And once we do, and we do that through coaching. So once we know what the scores are across the 15 elements, we coach it to try and get that level in there. And we use examples of, and I'll give you an example if I may, Malcolm, but let's say I'm really high on decision making, I'm really low on impulse control. That's a boss who just makes snap decisions. Go, 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 go. They don't even consult with their staff. They don't ask them what they think because they just want to make that decision. They're really good at making decisions, but they make them impulsively. And then they may regret half of those decisions a week down the line. It's the wrong decision. And they didn't consult with the rest of the team because they think what they know is right because I've been a boss for 30 years. Of course I'm right. And actually, they're wrong.
Yes. I'm also with you on the fear bit, because obviously getting top CEOs, as been doing, up to billionaires on the program, they're fearful that they make a mistake, and they want a PR person, their PA, and even a technical guy in the room with them. And I say no. And fortunately, they still want to be on the show, but we've said no. We've said no, and they start off a bit nervous, and we have a little green room chat, just like you and I were doing there. And then they're back. They've lost the fear. They've jumped. It's like my dad pushed me into the river to learn to swim. You know?
Yeah. And I think that's the whole thing about most businesses. Until you find out about it, until somebody makes you aware of it, and then you do the scientifically validated assessment. Once you've done that, and actually you see the benefit, as say you are the leader, the CEO, then you think, right, I now know what this is. Thanks very much. This is like a eureka moment. Can I get the rest of the board on this? Can I get the rest of my leaders on this? The rest of my managers on this? And it literally, for a very small investment in terms of turnover terms, your profits will be just that much better. And it's been proven. So I'm not just saying this for saying its sake. It's absolutely proven. Improved emotional intelligence across your team will improve the bottom line figure.
Yeah. At BizVision, we're about helping people achieve profitable velocity. And, my mindset, exactly what you've just been talking about, really propels that acceleration. Now, but how do you convince a hardened, wizened, traditional board of directors, wake up at the bottom of the table there, that EI is not some soft, silly skill, but it will bring the business real benefits if it invests in developing EI in its people? How do you make that intangible EI almost become tangible, so they will invest? Do you have a simple formula for ROI?
Yeah, interesting. I've got a simple, but it's not so much a formula, Mark. For me, it's more about a simple way of doing it. And I can answer this in two kind of parts. Me personally, I'm confident I could walk into the boardroom for an hour, do a presentation, use case studies, real case studies. Might have to anonymize the organization or anonymize the people, but I will use real case studies to prove that this does work. So that's my first part. I would then even put my name on the line and say, I don't want you to pay me to do this. If I could have 10% of your increase in profit, how about we pay me that way? But there's me putting my name on the block, but also I'm probably going to stand to make a fortune. And I know this from the guy that taught me has been in that position and wish he'd done it that way. As it was, he just went for the payment for the assessments and the coaching and all the rest of it, which is minuscule compared to the turnover increase. So I'm confident. One, I need to get into the board first and actually do a workshop for an hour, no more than an hour, to use some case studies to prove the point. Then from there, I'm really happy to put my name on the block and say, look, if it doesn't work, don't pay me anything. No matter where you are in the world, I'll come out, I'll do it. I'll do the whole coaching piece as well. If it doesn't improve your bottom line, I walk away, probably in disgrace, and you are happy ever after because you haven't had to pay me. But I'm confident if it was a percentage of profit, Malcolm, I would be a multi-millionaire pretty quickly.
Brilliant, Rob. And for those CEOs and watching this, I hope you've taken down on the screen that's behind me there, Rob's URL, and get him in. Get him in. Look, you're very knowledgeable on crisis management, and I can see how emotional intelligence will help in a crisis. Do you think that not enough businesses plan ahead to manage various crisis scenarios, or do they just wait for it to happen and hope they can wing it?
Yeah, sadly, I think there's kind of 2 points to this one, Mark. Sadly, I think a lot of businesses are not proactive enough. And this does link to emotional intelligence. This does link to a visionary leader who looks ahead and actually thinks about the what ifs. You know, this is all about what's in your business continuity plan. A business continuity plan is forward looking. It's all about, if this happens, we do A. If that happens, we do B. If that happens, we do C. So a visionary leader, and with a visionary team, and that's all part of emotional intelligence, that we look ahead, they will be able to do that. And Goleman talks about visionary leadership as well. He talks about 6 leadership styles. One of those styles is visionary. So it's about taking your team with you, being able to plan, and being able to plan for what I call the what ifs, and having that written down in your business continuity plan. Absolutely no doubt about it. Yeah, you've got all these other skill sets that come within the emotional intelligence spectrum, you know, about being assertive, about being engaging, and having empathy. You know, they're all in there. You name it. It's like problem solving, decision making, all of these. There's 15 of these kind of sub elements within emotional intelligence. Really good visionary leaders have got a balance in all of these. They've got that balance in there, and they do think ahead. Some businesses, as you know, Malcolm, have really survived COVID very, very well because they had it in their business plans 15, 20 years ago when we were talking about bird flu. Yes. Bird flu was the #1 threat 20 years ago when I was in policing. It was on the UK's National Register as the top end. We planned for it. We exercised it. I'm sorry, I'm getting into my old the helmet behind me now. I'm getting to my police world. But that's what we used to do. We used to exercise. We used to take, and it was all about what did we learn from the exercise? What have we learned? So this, again, it goes into social awareness. It goes into relationship building with our partners, with other agencies. How do we do this as a collective rather than insular and trying to get through it on our own? Many of the organizations today that are surviving COVID and thriving from COVID is because they've got really good relationships with partner organizations, suppliers, etc., etc. I mean, just look at Mercedes as an example. The fact that they're using their technology for the breathing equipment that they normally give the driver. That's just one example of partnering with wider government, not necessarily for profit, but for the greater good of social society, etc., etc.
Excellent. Now, can I ask you a social question? In your career, you've seen all social levels, I would expect, within our policing career. Do you think in the UK we're becoming more socially conscious, or is there still a very wide gap with the profit first people ruling the roost? Oh, and how can emotional intelligence help to develop a fairer community?
Wow, Malcolm, that's a
I know.
good question.
Yeah.
Really,
It's a second but last question, Rob.
Yeah. Let me answer the first part. So social awareness, I think we are becoming more socially aware, and that's because of social media. We're getting things instantaneously, as you know, literally instantaneously. So society is becoming much more socially aware. Hence, we're getting uprisings on certain things, things about the planet, the demonstrations that we have in London against all things kind of plastic, etc., etc. So I think we're definitely much more socially aware. However, those who are at the top and making the money at the top are still there. And some of those people, as we know, are in government. Without me trying to get political here, they are in government. And it's almost like it's a them and us thing. The decisions that are being made doesn't really affect them. And there are some really good, don't get me wrong, there are some really good politicians around who are, for me, emotionally intelligent. They're aware of self, they're aware of society, they're aware of what's going on within their constituencies. And some of them have said, right, no more for me on the front bench or whatever it might be. I'm not with you on the decision. I'm going to stand back. So your last part of your question, Malcolm, was about, well, what can we do about this? Again, I think Daniel Goleman kind of came up with this as well. So this isn't my idea. I'm not trying to say this is Rob's idea, but I'm pretty sure it's Daniel Goleman. Might have been a guy called Stephen Stein, who's also very, very high in the emotional intelligence world. What I would advocate is if we could have emotional intelligence on the curriculum at primary school and secondary school, from a 5-year-old all the way through to when you're 18 and you leave school, college, and even into the universities, wouldn't this be a much better place to live in? Wouldn't every country? And I mean globally. I don't just mean in the UK. I'm talking globally. If everybody could be aware of what emotional intelligence is, because we've all got it, as I mentioned before, we've all got it, and we're all born with it. But we can all develop it much more quickly if we know about it when we're 5 years old. And then when we're all the way through our education, and then our leaders that we have in 25 years will be so much more emotionally intelligent.
I'm totally with you on that. And I could have done with swapping Latin for AI. That would have done me great.
How often have you used your Latin?
Never. And I totally with you on many politicians with strong AI. We've fortunately on our channels have had Sakia Starmer. With his human rights background and that, very, very socially aware. Rob, final question. I like to give all my guests 3 wishes. Now, if I was to give you those 3 wishes for business leaders to understand the value of embracing emotional intelligence, what would your 3 wishes be?
Oh, first one, nice and easy, Malcolm, was that all business leaders undertake a scientifically validated emotional intelligence assessment. That's the first thing. Okay. Taking the assessment is one thing. Once you've got it, you've got this big document in front of you and you're not aware of what to do with it. It's got colors on it. It's got numbers on it. So now what do I do with it? If you just take the test, I've done the assessment. I know what my emotional intelligence level is. That's not good enough. Once we've got that assessment done, so my second wish is all business leaders, once they've done a scientifically validated assessment, they then get coaching. And I would suggest an independent coach, not somebody from within the business, somebody from out with the business, so that there's no kind of steering in a particular direction, there's no groupthink, any of those kind of things, no biases coming into it. So they get an independent coach to take them through for however long they wish to be coached for. Some people have coaches right the way through their careers. That would be great if they could do it. My third wish, if I may, Malcolm, I'm going to be kind of a little bit indirect with it, really. But for me, it's for potential business leaders, if I may. And it goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, that emotional intelligence be part of the national curriculum at all schools globally from 5-year-old to 18-year-old.
Brilliant. Those are 3 great answers, or 3 great wishes, Rob. Rob Hoblin of Calmdale, I have thoroughly enjoyed learning much more about emotional intelligence than I knew about, that's for certain. Thank you very much indeed for a fascinating interview.
Malcolm, thanks very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you. And hopefully, if even one more person other than you and me learns a little bit more about emotional intelligence, that will be fantastic.